So I just saw The Drama, which is the latest film from Kristoffer Borgli. I thoroughly enjoyed his previous two films being Sick of Myself and Dream Scenario, so naturally I was excited for this one. His films are all high concept and transgressive, even uncomfortable. They all feature striking social critiques. I guess you could call him a provocateur. I would bet that Kristoffer Borgli, Yorgos Lanthimos and Ruben Östlund all get together once a week to tickle each other. The film stars Robert Pattinson and Zendaya. It's hilarious how casting two ultra famous heartthrobs together in a movie about them getting married is going to attract a load of cloying fanboys and fangirls, but then the movie itself is actually a tense, morbid, nervous, paranoid, and disturbing experience. Pattinson is extremely funny, Zendaya is on the top of her game, it's probably her best performance, and also her riskiest performance. Love the unsettling score and the punchy editing. The story is obviously the highlight, and it would be best to go in knowing as little as possible. It offers up a lot of uncomfortable questions, but explores them from every possible angle. The third act is immensely satisfying, everything feels like it's ready to explode. And that's all I can say without spoiling the movie. I actually have a lot to discuss about this film, so I don't know, skip this if you haven't seen it. It's great, go watch it. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. So, spoilers. A group of characters go around a table, one by one, and talk about the worst thing they've ever done. And it's revealed that Zendaya's character, Emma, almost committed a mass shooting when she was a teenager. She planned out the entire thing, even had a gun, but backed out at the last moment. This obviously causes a lot of concern in Robert Pattinson's character, Charlie, to the point where he is now having second thoughts about the wedding. Obviously, this movie raises a lot of pressing questions. What is the worst thing your partner could do and for you to still be okay with it? Where do you draw the line? Do you believe your worst deeds are justified or dismissible? Did Emma actually do something wrong? If so, is it the worst thing she could have done? Is she capable of change? Is she deserving of forgiveness? Would you forgive her? Some of these questions can only be answered by you, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun during those sleepless nights while you mull them over. 4 characters reveal the worst thing they did. So, who committed the worst act? Of course, there's Emma, who almost did a school shooting. There's Mike, who used his ex-girlfriend as a human shield against an aggressive street dog. There's Rachel, who, as a child, locked her neighbour in a closet in the middle of the woods and ran away. And there's Charlie, who tentatively admitted to cyberbullying someone. This is just a surface-level observation of their confessions. The devil is in the details. Each character says something to obfuscate the severity of their deed. Mike claims that the vibes were off with his ex, and he was on bad terms with her for most of the holiday when the dog attacked them. While he does not say it, you can tell that he doesn't really give a shit about her. On some level, he believed that she deserved to be bitten by the dog, mostly because of the bad attitude she was giving him, and the fact that she aggravated the dog into biting. Rachel seems to give even less of a shit over the consequences of her actions. She seems to both not know and not care about what happened to her neighbour. She doesn't even know how long he spent in the closet, so it could have been days before he was found. She mostly fixates on how scared she was of getting into trouble. Charlie hesitates before giving an answer. He thinks it over for a bit before bringing up cyberbullying. He mentions that the victim's family had to move, but isn't entirely sure if it was a result of his bullying. He doesn't go into much detail, so there is a lot left up to assumption. It's not clear to what extent or form the cyberbullying took. Since he doesn't know the full impact of his actions, it could be assumed that this isn't actually the worst thing he did and is merely just a random bad deed thrown out as an answer. He mentions how he was only 14 when this happened, so he chalks his actions up to a lack of maturity and emphasizes how he's changed a lot since then. Emma flat out admits to her bad deed. She gives a full, succinct account of what happened. She doesn't beat around the bush and doesn't try to dismiss it. As a character detail, you can tell she spent a long time contending with her actions and has fully accepted what she has done. She doesn't hide behind an excuse like the others. Emma's confession kills the mood and the fun and games are over. Rachel is disgusted by Emma's actions and immediately jumps down her throat over it. But this begs the question, how bad were Emma's actions? Unlike Mike and Rachel, Emma actually didn't hurt anyone. Yes, she thought about doing something much, much worse, but the important part is that she didn't do it. The rest of them did go through with it. Bear in mind, Mike and Rachel twisted their stories to sound like their actions were justified, that they were scared or whatever. Charlie's worst act was committed when he was around the same age as Emma, so they both had the same amount of time to learn from their mistakes. So Emma is the only one not to cause any harm and had just as much time to change as the others, yet she's still being held accountable. So this triggers a paranoid existential panic in Charlie as he tries to reconcile with the fact that his soon-to-be wife almost slaughtered countless people as a teenager. He has become disturbed at the thought of his fiancée's past, which causes him to have second thoughts about their wedding. He starts to become paranoid over the thought of other people finding out, which causes him to act erratically. What's funny is that all of this came to light because of Charlie's own reckless judgment of others. On their way home, Charlie sees the DJ they hired for their wedding smoking crack on the street, or at least he thinks she's smoking crack, and he's almost sure it actually is the DJ. Nevertheless, he tells their friends about it, which inspires them to confess the worst thing they ever did. Charlie's own frivolous gossiping sets off a chain reaction that results in him being the center of his own scandal. In a moment of weakness, Charlie suddenly attempts to have an affair with his co-worker Misha, but backs out before anything can happen. I've seen this movie twice now, and both times this moment got a bigger reaction than when Emma admitted to attempting a school shooting. I think it's interesting because isn't Charlie's actions much less severe? Like, even if he went through with it, nobody would have been physically harmed, and there isn't even a law against cheating on your partner. I think this scene had a stronger impact because it shows present-day Charlie doing something immoral, whereas past Emma had the opportunity to grow and change. A funny detail is that when Misha thinks Charlie and Emma are trying to confront her over the attempted affair, she immediately shifts the blame to Charlie. Just another instance of a character trying to avoid responsibility for their actions. Before I wrap this up, there are a few other details I would like to go over that are more to do with the characters rather than the themes of the film. I like how Charlie and Emma's first interaction mirrors the final scene, where they have to start over to wipe the slate clean in order to salvage the situation. With all the coffee shop customers glaring at Charlie's awkward flirting, the opening scene also establishes how Charlie is already anxiety-ridden and slightly paranoid. This makes him the worst person possible to find out that his fiancée once planned on being a mass murderer. Similarly, the scene of their first kiss also hints toward the ending. Charlie tries to sneak Emma into an art gallery after hours, but ends up tripping the alarm and locking the security doors. At this moment, he impulsively kisses her. I see this as a parallel to the main conflict of the film. Both are trapped together in a claustrophobic, panic-inducing situation, and since they have nowhere else to escape, it inevitably brings them closer together. Emma's deaf ear starts out as this little imperfection. It was the main snag in their first meeting, the first detail Charlie ever learned about Emma. He learnt about it even before learning her name, so of course he is endeared by it. He makes playful games out of it the same way you would with a partner's freckle. However, during Emma's confession, she reveals that she lost her hearing after firing the rifle too close to her face. What was once a cute detail on Charlie's fiancée turned into a grim reminder of the horrendous act she almost committed. It's always going to be there and it's never going to go away. It's no longer something to be endeared by, it's now something that's going to make him uncomfortable, possibly for forever. Speaking of grim reminders, I like how the smoothing Emma makes has the exact same colour and consistency as blood. Maybe it's not the most subtle bit of symbolism, but just like the ear, I like how the morbidity is creeping in and corrupting their everyday life. Toward the end of the film, Charlie tells Emma that Freud once wrote that repressed emotions surface later in uglier ways. He's trying to intellectualize her past to try and make sense as to why someone would commit a random act of violence. He's trying to find a reason, an excuse, an explanation to her past so that he can feel more comfortable about it. Again, we can see that Emma has already come to terms with her past and has moved on. This Freud quote is actually a reassurance for Charlie, disguised as therapy for Emma. What's even funnier is that this quote applies directly to Charlie himself. Charlie has spent an entire film battling with repressed feelings over his fiancée, which then manifests as him having manic outbursts before having a final meltdown at the wedding. Every single bad thing that occurs at the end is a result of how Charlie handled the situation. His anxiety has seeped through the lid and is now spilling down the sides. I've heard some people theorize that Emma was the victim of Charlie's cyberbullying, which is what motivated her to attempt the school shooting. This kind of holds water since there's a lot of details that line up. Both are the same age, both Charlie's victim and Emma moved house, Emma spent a lot of time online. However, for every detail that matches, there's one that doesn't. Charlie and Emma lived in different countries, Charlie seemed to have known the victim, plus Charlie refers to the victim as being male. I don't think it was intended for Charlie to secretly be Emma's bully. That would have been too convenient for a movie like this. Rather, I think this is meant to emphasize the unseen impact of Charlie's deeds. Cyberbullying, or even just plain old regular bullying, can radicalize someone into heinous actions. Even ignoring the most extreme outcome, bullying can still have long-term effects that persist throughout the victim's life. Again, Emma didn't actually harm anyone, whereas it's very likely, almost certain, that Charlie did harm someone. This movie explores how difficult it can be to forgive someone. Charlie is essentially forced into forgiving Emma due to the fact that they are getting married in less than a week, and even then he struggles with that. I don't think he'd be so willing to defend her if that weren't the case. The issue presented here is very complicated and tricky. There's a lot to untangle, a lot to consider. Characters are constantly trying to squeeze the nuance out of the situation, to reduce it down to a bite-sized morsel so that it can be passed around as easily as possible. People will try to sugarcoat themselves to avoid condemnation, and will give the least charitable interpretation to others. Even Mike remarks how he could tell Rachel's story in her place and make it sound worse, showing how easy it is to exaggerate details to warp someone's image. With this inherent bias that most people have, it would be very difficult for someone to forgive Emma, even though she never actually harmed anyone. But if our thoughts that remain thoughts can be judged as much as our thoughts that become actions, is anyone deserving of forgiveness?